going to share a story that I heard about yesterday that I'm still processing, and so it's the only thing I can talk about today. So I'm still very much figuring it out, and I think there's some things maybe will be helpful. It has to do with how what we do and say has such a profound effect on other people that we don't even know, other people in different countries. So here's how the story goes. I was talking to my sister yesterday. She was catching me up about things we hadn't talked in a while. And then she said, yeah, and I went to see, the dentist that Mum loved so much. And our mum loved this dentist. She had this dentist for 21 years, and he was so kind to her. And my sister and brother-in-law actually, a couple weeks ago, went to this same dentist. They both had an appointment with this fellow. They've worked with him for 15 years. And he was his normal, cheery self. And in both cases, especially with my sister, he was planning out her next treatment plan with a crown, something we're all thrilled to have done, and how that would go. And that was August 21st. And then my sister and brother-in-law went on a little holiday, and they got back a few days ago, and they opened up the local paper. And in the local paper, here's this obituary for their dentist, just saying that he had died suddenly the very next day after my sister had seen him. And of course, there was not much given, but, my sister is living in the town that my siblings and I were born and raised in. My dad was born and raised in. We kind of know a lot of people. There's a lot of people in that cemetery that I know. So, of course, because my sister was also working in a medical office previously, she has a lot of connections. So here's how the day unfolded for this dentist. He showed up at work on the 22nd like he normally does. He saw his patients in the morning, and then he went home for lunch like he normally does. And I guess in the last few years, sometimes he falls asleep, so they reach him by phone because he's not at the office for the afternoon patients. And he comes back to the office, just normal thing. So on August 22nd, he did not respond to their calls. So probably after an hour, they got worried and they drove over to his house, and the car wasn't there. The house was dark. I guess eventually they got into the house. Maybe they contacted his girlfriend. And they're looking around the house. They don't know where he is. In the meantime, so anyway, how to tell this story. In the meantime, so then they finally find a letter. And in the letter, he explains what he's done. So by the time they called 911 to contact the RCMP, that he had this plan to end his life, the RCMP were already at the river pulling his body out. So he had a plan. He had a plan the day he talked to my sister. He had a plan on how he was going to do this. He went to the train trestle, and I know this river very well. I used to canoe on it a lot. I grew up beside this river. The river also goes into Edmonton, where I spent a large part of my life. The train trestle that he jumped off of over top of this river is about a mile from where my parents used to live. I know exactly the situation. And hearing that his body was found so quickly, I know there's 2 places in the river where his body probably washed up, and that's how they could find him so quickly. So even though I don't know this person well, I just find this so tragic. For many, many reasons. I understand, the location. He was my mom's dentist. I went with her in the last few years of her life, and he was so kind to her and so reassuring. And he knew that she was, entering into dementia, had dementia, and she was so afraid. And he was just great with her. And he had a huge dental practice. Huge. And he had a staff of at least 10 women, and they all adored him. And then at one point in his life, I was reading this in his obituary. I knew this because actually I saw his pictures in his office. He had picture books of going to Nicaragua and Bolivia and different places where he was part of this global organization of dentists that go to poor countries to help people who are not having access to dental care. And so, you look at this person. I looked at him a few years ago and I thought, wow, he's really doing well in his practice. He has a mission in life. He's helping poor people in poor countries around the world. He has an affluent income. As a dentist you do, and he was doing orthodontics as well, so, he was doing fine. He had 3 children. He had a girlfriend, probably grandchildren on the way. And so what is so tragic in all this, so many tragedies, is that a person he was only 53 years old. So here's a person who eventually got to such a point of desperation that in his mind he figured out the best way of dealing with this was to jump off a train trestle into a river. So how tragic that he didn't, in all of those groups of people that he was connected to, that he didn't have someone to confide in. How tragic that he didn't think about the effects this would have on his children, his father who's still alive, his girlfriend, his former wife, his team of women at his office, probably thousands of patients. He was in practice for 28 years. It's even affecting me, and I didn't know him so well. All the people that he helped in all of these countries like Nicaragua and Bolivia. And out of this deep pain and confusion, he did not consider the effects of this kind of act. That's very tragic. So any time that I hear about a suicide, I'm profoundly moved by it. I'm moved that these people are so swept up in either mental illness or depression, or just maybe a spur-of-the-moment thing where the pain was very intense, and the immediate thought was, I got to deal with this and end it. Venerable Semke and I went to a suicide prevention workshop years ago, and we watched a very compelling movie about a man who went to the top of a bridge in San Francisco, and he had the plan to jump. And as he was headed to his jump-off point, there was a very attractive woman who looked at him and smiled, and he thought she was going to come and talk to him, and she kept walking. So then he decided, well, if I can't even get the attention of someone who smiles at me and they're not interested in knowing what my story is, it's obvious I have to jump. So he jumped. And as he was traveling through the air before he hit the water, this thought came up, I don't want to die. And the reason that we know about this story, I don't want to die, is because he hit the water, he was very smashed up, but he didn't die. And so now he's doing all of this work around the world, speaking to people, what are the warning signs, speaking to families who are grieving, how can we help? So then I have to wonder, did this person have the same thought as he was traveling through the air before he hit the water? The river's very fast moving. It's a very major river. It feeds into the South Saskatchewan, which then heads off to the Hudson Bay. So once you're in that river, you don't have much of a chance. So my wishes for his family at this point are that they find the tools and the support so they can deal with this loss, which they'll be working with for their entire lives. I think all of us in the room have maybe known of people, directly or indirectly, who have made this tragic choice. I hope that Mark, in his future lives, meets the Dharma early, and so that when he encounters a teaching like the Precious Human Rebirth teaching, and he gets to that very low point in a next life, that he sees the incredible opportunity that he has in this life, and how tragic that he could not see all the good he's done in this life. All the help he had given to people. So there's many places where we can read about Precious Human Rebirth for our own sake. There's a fabulous section in the Foundation of Buddhist Practice. I'll read one section here from His Holiness and Venerable Children. Geshe Tabke recently, when he was teaching us, the very first day reminded us about this incredible opportunity that we have. And do we really get it? I'll ask myself that question. But now I'm really compelled to look at this very deeply. Do we really get it? Oh, here we are. We're at Sravasti Abbey. Venerable Children teaches us every single day. It's just what happens here. I'm just here. Nothing to do with the causes and conditions we created in the past, that they could run out tomorrow. Here we are. His Holiness says, I have found in my discussions with people that many suffer from low self-esteem and self-hatred. When we reflect on our spectacular good fortune in having a precious human life, these distorted conceptions vanish. We have all 18 factors of a precious human life, so obviously we are a worthwhile and adequate person. We created tremendous constructive karma in previous lives to have our present opportunities, so we are capable of Dharma practice. We have all necessary conditions to progress on the path and accomplish our spiritual aims in this life. So seeing the future as bleak is unrealistic. Consistent meditation on precious human life prevents us from such self-defeating and inaccurate ways of viewing ourselves. To the contrary, it generates great enthusiasm for Dharma practice. Let's not take this opportunity for granted.